The morning sun spilled across the cobblestones of Rome, bathing the Trevi Fountain in gold. Tourists clustered around its marble edges, tossing coins and snapping selfies, their voices blending into a constant hum of wonder. Somewhere beneath that buzz, on the far left side of the fountain, a boy sat cross-legged on the ground, nearly invisible. His name was Luca, 14 years old. He wasn't begging. He never begged. Instead, his fingers danced over a sketchpad, charcoal staining his fingertips as he shaded the eyes of a tourist he was drawing from memory. His work was hauntingly good, almost too good for someone with no training, no tools, no home. Behind him, leaning against the fountain stone ledge, was a cardboard sign. It was handwritten, slightly smudged from dew, but still legible. Portraits for €5, raising money for my sister's medicine. Some stopped, most didn't. And of those who did, some offered a sad smile and kept walking. But Luca didn't look up. He couldn't afford to. His little sister, Chiara, was coughing blood again last night. The doctor at the shelter said it was worsening, a rare infection, treatable but expensive. And they had nothing, not even €1 to spare. So he sketched and hoped. As he worked, the crowd swirled around him. A toddler cried. A street performer juggled fire. A group of wealthy teens posed nearby, dripping in designer clothes, laughing as they pointed at the poor locals. Luca didn't notice. Not yet. Until one of them said loud enough for the whole square to hear, "Hey, is that kid pretending to be homeless to sell art?" Luca froze. Another teen chimed in, mockingly. Bet he made that sick sister sign just to guilt people. So pathetic. Luca looked up, wide-eyed. People were turning their heads, watching, whispering. The taller boy stepped forward, grinning cruelly. He snatched Luca's sketchbook off the ground. "No!" Luca jumped up. "Please don't!" The teen barely looked at him. He walked to the edge of the fountain, raised the sketchbook over his head, and threw it into the water. The moment froze. The pages floated for a second before sinking, black ink bleeding into the turquoise water. Luca just stood there. His hands hung at his sides. He couldn't breathe. Those drawings, those were hours, days. His hope, his escape, his only chance. No one moved. No one helped. Until someone did. A man in a simple black cap and sunglasses stepped through the crowd, quiet as shadow. He didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He just walked past the teens and stepped into the fountain. Gasps rippled through the crowd like shock waves. Tourists pulled out their phones. Some laughed nervously, unsure if it was a performance. Others whispered, "Is he crazy?" But no one stopped him. The man waded into the Trevi Fountain as if it were nothing more than a puddle. Water lapped at his jeans. Coins glinted beneath the surface like forgotten wishes. He knelt, steady and slow. The sketchbook floated near the base of the statue. Its spine was soaked, pages warped, charcoal bleeding into pale gray clouds. Still, it held together, barely. He reached down with both hands, lifting it like something sacred. And then he turned around. Luca was still frozen. His jaw trembled. He looked so small, standing in the shadow of the fountain, eyes wide with shock, with shame, with something deeper. the familiar feeling of being ignored by the world. The man walked straight toward him. Every step out of the water left dark footprints on the marble. He stopped in front of Luca, crouched down, and gently extended the ruined sketchbook. "Are these yours?" His voice was calm, low, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. Luca stared at the man's face, the stubble, the lines, the eyes, tired but kind, familiar, too familiar. The sunglasses came off. The crowd collectively gasped again. A woman nearby whispered with disbelief, "Oh my God, that's Keanu Reeves." The name spread like fire. Luca's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He had seen that face on movie posters, on TV screens when the shelter workers let them watch films on weekends. His father, before he disappeared, used to call Keanu the quiet warrior. But he wasn't quiet now. Not really. Not to Luca. He handed over the ruined sketchbook, water dripping down his fingers. "You okay?" Keanu asked softly. Luca nodded slowly, gripping the book with shaking hands. The rich teens who had thrown it stood still now, silent. Their smirks were gone. One of them muttered, "Dude, we didn't know." Keanu didn't even look at them. "You saw someone weaker than you," he said, eyes never leaving Luca's. "And instead of helping, you humiliated him. That's not strength. That's cowardice." There was no rage in his voice, just truth, cold and clear. The teens backed away, eyes downcast. One girl in the crowd began clapping, then another. Soon the square was filled with scattered applause, not for Keanu, not really, but for what he had done, for the line he had drawn. Keanu stood, placing a hand on Luca's shoulder. The boy flinched at first, but didn't pull away. "Do you have more drawings?" he asked. Luca hesitated, voice barely audible. "Some at the shelter." Keanu nodded once. "Let's go see them." And just like that, the man who had stepped into the fountain turned and began walking with the boy no one had seen until now. Phones followed. The story had already begun to go viral. But Luca didn't know that yet. All he knew was this. For the first time in his life, someone believed in him. The alley behind the fountain was quiet. Away from the tourists, away from the coins and marble angels, Luca walked with his head down, cradling the damp sketchbook against his chest. Keanu walked beside him, not as a celebrity, not as a movie star, but as something rarer, someone who listened. They didn't speak at first, until Luca finally asked, without looking up, "Why did you do that?" Keanu glanced over, his voice as calm as ever. "Because someone should have, and I was there." Luca nodded, swallowing hard. His shoes slapped the pavement, too big for his feet, soles taped with duct tape. Every few steps, Keanu's gaze drifted toward him, not judging, just seeing. They stopped in front of a small, rust-colored building tucked between two shops. The sign above the door read, "Centro di Accoglienza San Giusto," a local shelter. Keanu held the door as Luca slipped inside. The room smelled of warm bread and cheap soap. The lights flickered faintly overhead. A few volunteers looked up from folding linens and sorting canned goods. One of them, an older woman with a silver cross around her neck, rushed over. "Luca, dove sei stato?" Your sister's been asking for you. Luca looked guilty. I was working. The woman noticed the man beside him, and her expression shifted from confusion to stunned silence. Keanu Reeves? She whispered in disbelief. He gave a gentle nod and a soft smile, but said nothing. Luca led him down a narrow hallway and into a tiny room with bunk beds, peeling paint, and a curtain instead of a door. On the bottom bunk, beneath a threadbare blanket, lay Chiara, 8 years old, coughing weakly into her pillow. When she saw her brother, her face lit up with exhaustion and joy all at once. Luca, you're back! He rushed over, kneeling beside her. I brought someone, he said, glancing toward the door. Chiara looked up and gasped, No way! Keanu knelt beside her bed, his movements slow, deliberate. He extended his hand. Hi, Chiara. I'm a friend of your brother's. She took his hand in both of hers, staring up like he'd stepped out of a movie screen and into her dreams. Luca stood and crossed to the small crate beside the bunk. He pulled out a bundle wrapped in newspaper. Inside were his real sketches, the ones he kept hidden, his best work. He laid them out on the bed. Keanu leaned in. One drawing showed Chiara asleep, her small hand clinging to Luca's. Another captured a vendor's cart in the early morning light, its wheels sketched in precise detail. One was a portrait of the Trevi Fountain, sketched entirely from memory. Water cascading over stone like falling silk. Keanu said nothing for a long moment. Then, these are beautiful. Luca shifted on his feet, unsure what to say. No one had ever said that. Not like this. Not like it mattered. Keanu turned to him. How much are they? Luca blinked. I don't know. I've never sold them. Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He didn't count bills. He didn't ask questions. He just took out a thick envelope and handed it to Luca. For all of them. Luca opened it. His hands shook as he saw what was inside. 1,000 euros in cash. He looked up, eyes wide, tears burning at the edges. I can get her medicine now. I can finally... He stopped. His throat closed around the words. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. And food, and clean paper, and anything else you need. Chiara was crying now, not from sickness, from hope. In that dim shelter room, something shifted in the air. This wasn't just charity. It was belief. The next morning, Rome felt different. The Trevi Fountain was buzzing again. But this time, it wasn't just tourists making wishes. It was whispers. It was questions. Did you hear what happened yesterday? Someone said Keanu Reeves was here. He jumped into the fountain. There's a video. You have to see it. And there was. Someone in the crowd had recorded it. The moment Keanu stepped into the water, lifted the soaked sketchbook, and knelt in front of a shaking boy. The clip, just 27 seconds long, hit social media like a thunderbolt. Within an hour, it had 500,000 views. By noon, it was on CNN, BBC, and La Repubblica. By evening, it had reached 8 million. The hashtags started trending. Sketchbook Angel, Keanu in Rome, Boy at the Fountain. And then came the photos. Someone posted a still image. Keanu, standing in the fountain, sketchbook dripping in his hand. Luca standing beside him barefoot, stunned. The framing was perfect, cinematic, like something out of a film. The caption read, "Kindness costs nothing, but changes everything." The comments were instant, global. "I haven't cried at a video in years, until now." Keanu just reminded the world what a real hero looks like. That boy is all of us, lost, trying, hoping someone will see us. But Luca didn't know any of this yet. At that exact moment, he was sitting beside his sister's bed, counting the exact dosage for her first round of medication. The pharmacy down the street had finally handed it over, with receipts and a bag, and even a knowing smile from the pharmacist. "It's on the house," she whispered, slipping the change back into Luca's hand. "Everyone's talking about you." Back at the shelter, a volunteer brought in a tablet and placed it on Luca's lap. "You need to see this," she said. Luca clicked the link. He watched himself, as if watching someone else. Watched Keanu step into the water. Watched himself accept the sketchbook like it was something sacred. By the end of the video, he was crying. But not because of what Keanu did, because of what came next. His inbox, normally empty, exploded. "Are your drawings for sale? My daughter's a young artist. Your story gave her hope. I'd like to donate. Where can I send money? Can I commission something of the fountain? Name your price. You're a genius, kid. Don't stop drawing." Then, an email from a name he didn't recognize. Subject: Art Gallery Inquiry. Florence Exhibit Opportunity. Luca looked up at Chiara, who was smiling through her mask. "You're famous now," she said softly. "You got seen." 2 days later, the Trevi Fountain didn't look like a tourist attraction anymore. It looked like a pilgrimage. A new cardboard sign now sat in Luca's place, but this one wasn't written by him. It had been left by a visitor from Spain and was now surrounded by dozens more, taped to the stones, tucked between cracks, left like prayers. The boy who drew hope. May every child be seen the way he was. Don't just throw coins. Lift someone up. People were still tossing money into the fountain, but now some were leaving envelopes. Some were sketching. Some just sat quietly, hoping to feel what they saw in that video. Across the plaza, behind sunglasses and a coffee cup, Keanu watched in silence. He didn't speak to reporters, didn't grant interviews, just stood beneath a tree, observing a ripple effect he'd never intended, but was grateful for. Meanwhile, Luca wasn't at the fountain. He was on a train to Florence, invitation in hand. In his lap sat a hard leather case, gifted to him by the shelter director. Inside it were his best 5 drawings, not copies, originals. Chiara sat beside him, wrapped in a clean coat and eating a chocolate croissant like it was gold. Her cheeks had color again. Her eyes sparkled. "I think I want to learn drawing too," she said between bites. Luca smiled, staring out the window. Fields passed like dreams, and he realized something. He wasn't surviving anymore. He was moving forward. Back in Rome, something strange happened. The 2 rich teens, the ones who mocked him, the ones who threw his work into the water, showed up at the fountain. Not with a phone, not with an excuse, but with a frame. Inside, it was a note, handwritten on linen paper. We were wrong. This is our apology, not just to Luca, but to every person we judged too quickly. May this stay here as a reminder. Art lives where compassion does. They placed the frame next to the fountain. Some people clapped. Some forgave. Some didn't. But no one forgot. That night, as Luca stepped into the Galleria degli Uffizi, the art director, a stoic woman in a silk scarf, greeted him with a nod and two simple words. Welcome, maestro. He had no suit, no press agent, no training. But he had something else. A gift, a story, and a heart no one could ignore anymore. The gallery was silent. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that feels sacred. Visitors walked slowly between the canvases, their footsteps softened by polished floors and reverence. On the white walls of Florence's most prestigious art space, 5 framed sketches hung side by side, unpolished, raw, real. Each one told a story. A child coughing beneath a blanket, a pair of torn shoes under moonlight, a boy sketching beneath the shadow of a marble god. Beneath them, a simple gold plaque read, Luca, Lines from the Street. All proceeds support free medication for children in shelters across Italy. Luca didn't stand by the art. He stood among the people, answering questions, listening to stories, shaking hands with strangers who had seen a piece of themselves in his lines. Across the room, Chiara sat on a bench between 2 gallery workers, showing them how she was learning to draw clouds. Her laughter echoed gently through the hall. And then, as the crowd began to thin, the gallery door opened. Luca turned, and his breath caught. There, wearing the same worn jacket, the same quiet smile, stood Keanu Reeves. They didn't need words. Keanu walked over to the final piece in the series, a black and white sketch of the Trevi Fountain, drawn from memory. In the corner was a tiny detail, a man, ankle deep in water, reaching down. You remembered, Keanu said softly. Luca nodded. I never forgot. Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out, a folded envelope. He handed it to Luca. Inside was a short, handwritten note. The world didn't change because you went viral. It changed because you showed us what was always there. Don't stop drawing. K. And tucked inside the note was a single coin. Not cash, not a check. Just one weathered copper coin. The kind tourists throw into the Trevi Fountain to make a wish. Luca blinked, confused. What's this for? Keanu smiled. Your turn. 1 month later. It was early morning. Before the tourists, before the crowds. Luca stood once more at the Trevi Fountain. In one hand, he held Chiara's sketchbook. In the other, the coin. He stepped to the edge of the water, where it all began. The city was quiet around him. I wish, he whispered, for every kid to be seen, just once. And then, with a flick of his wrist, he tossed the coin. It spun in the air, catching the rising sun, and disappeared into the water. A new ripple began. Sometimes it takes just one person to see the art inside you, and sometimes that person walks straight into a fountain to find it.